Hey everybody, and welcome to this pre-recorded session. This talk is going to be on gardening for moths and butterflies with myself, Species on the Map Officer at Butterfly Conservation Northern Ireland. This talk is going to go over a little bit about butterfly conservation, who we are and what we do, a little bit about the declines in moths and butterflies we've been seeing recently and why that might be happening, tips and tricks for gardening, and if you'd like to get involved with butterfly conservation, how you can do this. So first, a little bit of an introduction about myself. So I studied wildlife conservation and ecology at undergraduate and master's level at the University of Chester a number of years ago now. For my undergraduate project, I didn't know anything about moths, but thought I would take up one for moth trapping, and little did I know it would become my new obsession. I really wanted to work for butterfly conservation, but unfortunately there wasn't any roles available at the time, so I became an ecologist instead. I did this for about a year, and then I became a staff member of BC in July of last year as Species on the Map Officer, and I've been here ever since. And my favourite moth is the emperor moth. So a bit about butterfly conservation then, if you've never heard of us before. We're a UK-wide charity and we're founded in 1968, so quite a long time ago now. Our mission really is the conservation of butterflies, moths, and our environment. Those three together rely on each other, so they all will have to be protected. We do this by taking practical conservation action on the ground across the UK at a wide range of different projects. We promote scientific studies, so we've got a fantastic group of scientists behind the scenes taking all the fantastic data we get and analyse it and produce our State of UK Butterflies and Moths reports using that data. We safeguard important sites, whether they are designated or not, and we encourage public enjoyment of butterflies and moths, so getting out and about in your local landscape and seeing what's flying in your area. Butterflies and moths then. So Lepidoptera is the scientific name for butterflies and moths, literally meaning scaly wings. So if you were anything like me as a child, I would have tried to catch butterflies with my hands, and I would have been told off by my mum saying that I was going to damage the wings. And when we say damaging the wings, we mean damaging these scales, which are highlighted in the photos there. Around the world, we have around 180,000 species of moths and butterflies, which is a huge amount. 59 butterfly species are resident in the UK or are regular migrants here in Northern Ireland. We have 27 in Northern Ireland. Over 2,500 species of moth in the UK, again, a humongous amount, and just around 1,000 in Northern Ireland. So the state of UK's butterflies then. This year we've seen butterfly numbers fall across the UK, and this was really evident after the big butterfly count. And as a result of this, butterfly conservation has stated a butterfly emergency. This is really to get members of government, members of the public, and anyone who will listen, kind of having their ears pricked up and listening about what's happening with moths and butterflies. If you'd like to read a little bit more in-depth information about this, there is the State of UK Butterflies 2022, which won't include the butterfly emergency we have released recently, but it will give you a little bit of an introduction as to what was going on with butterflies in 2022. With 80% of butterflies having declined since the 1970s, this is something we've known for quite a while now, and a third of moth numbers have fallen in that same period, so moths are definitely not immune to these reductions in populations. It's not all doom and gloom though. Some species are expanding. So on average, UK butterfly species with more of a southerly distribution are extending northwards. And this has been since the 1970s. We think this is really probably due to climate change, warming temperatures, which is obviously affecting the entire globe. But a really good species example is the comma. So it has undergone one of the largest range expansions that we've seen. So UK trends show a 203% increase in abundance, which is astonishing. And this has been since 1976 to 2019. And a 94% increase in distribution. And this is between 1973 and 2019. So you can see on the map on the right-hand side there, you can see those little distribution points are definitely moving up northwards. So you can see the change over time there. But why are butterflies and moths declining? Why do we think this is? Well, definitely a few reasons. Agricultural intensification, including the use of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and insecticides. The way we manage our land for agriculture hasn't changed massively over even the last 20 years. We utilize the land at a much faster rate and at a much intensified rate as well. Woodland management has changed. We use a lot more wood than we ever have before. Habitat loss is a result of both of those things. So 40% of broadleaved woodlands have been lost, 200,000 miles of hedgerow, 20 million elm trees from elm tree disease, and ash trees could be next due to ash dieback, and 98% of flower-rich meadows. So we have lost a great deal of habitat over that period of time. Climate change is obviously affecting the entire world, so we're not immune to this in the UK, and light pollution has been its highest than ever before. But as I said, it's not all doom and gloom because us at Butterfly Conservation are doing something about it. So we have a really fantastic long track record of helping species and changing public behaviour across the UK. We work really well with farmers and local authorities on a landscape scale, so not just small gardens. We work at huge landscape scales as well. Restoring habitats through different forms of management, providing advice on large projects as well as small, protecting the most important sites for our heavily protected butterflies and moths, species reintroductions if we think that that is the best thing to do for the species, and this will only be carried out with intensive research behind it, gardening advice for homes and councils, and creating new wild spaces in towns and cities. So we'll be talking about two of those things today, and helping volunteers monitor species. So a lot of the fantastic work that's carried out for butterfly conservation is done by staff, but a huge proportion is done by volunteers. So we do help them and support them with monitoring species and managing landscapes. But why should we conserve butterflies and moths? Well, there's a few really important reasons. They have intrinsic value to us as a group of people and as a nation and as a species. They have fantastic educational tools for children, so teaching children about metamorphosis, the change of life cycle. Ecosystems, food webs, they play a really important part in food webs. They're a food source for small mammals like voles, mice, amphibians like frogs and toads, reptiles like lizards, and obviously birds as well. So lots of different bird species and their chicks rely on butterflies and moths. They're really fantastic for our health. So what we mean by that is getting out to do moth trapping or taking part in a butterfly transect. This can really improve people's mental and physical health by getting out in different environments and meeting new people. And pollination of wildflowers or different plants. So we know that butterflies are very good pollinators, but moths also pollinate during the nighttime. So we have a really sort of full cycle there of pollination from this species. But why garden for wildlife? Why is that what we're talking about today? Well, gardens cover more than 1 million hectares of land in the UK, which is absolutely astonishing. The Royal Horticultural Society Greening Grey Britain report has quite a few fantastic facts that I've pulled out to talk about today. So in urban areas, gardens represent 50% of green space. Again, a huge proportion. In 2005, 7% of UK front gardens were completely paved, and this rose to 30% in 2015. So what we really want to do is get those areas back if we can. And making our gardens better for pollinators can help populations. So by improving the gardens that we have, or potentially creating new gardens and wild spaces, we can create stepping stones for butterflies and moths to move around, so increasing their distribution and therefore increasing their abundance and improving population numbers. So we're going to talk about gardening now. So if you would ever like to plant anything in your garden for moths and butterflies, these are the plants that I would steer away from if you can. So most bedding plants that you see in the garden centres unfortunately have a lot of the time no available pollen or nectar. So although they look lovely, they don't really benefit our moths and butterflies too much. So examples of these are petunias, begonias, busy lizzies, most pansy species except wild pansies and violets, toilets. And what we call these plants are plastic plants because they don't really provide very much. And those flowers with unsuitable shapes are also not great for moths and butterflies. And what we mean by that are plant shapes or flower shapes that are very tubular. Potentially, they're quite narrow. So butterflies and moths find it really difficult to get their proboscis in there and have a feed. So I would steer away from those. But almost everything else is very, very good for insects. So they're not too picky. And this is some really lovely photographs here of some bees taking advantage of that lovely open flower shape that is fantastic also for moths and butterflies. Nectar and pollen sources is what butterflies and moths really rely on. So we're going to talk about periods through the year and species that you can plant at those periods in the year that will help moths and butterflies by providing nectar and pollen sources. So your list for March and May really is early flowering heather, hyacinth, hellebore, native primrose or cowslip, not the multicolored garden centre kind, polyanthus and bugle. So some really, really lovely plants there. I've also included some photos so you can kind of see what these would look like in your garden if you did plant them. So planting for moths and butterflies is fantastic for them and very beneficial, but it is really nice to know what your garden is going to look like if they do grow there. From June to August, we have a slightly different plant list: alliums, perennial cornflowers, thistles, scabious, hardy geranium, catmint, verbena. So again, a lovely group of plants. There's your alliums, some really lovely purple hues. There's your thistles, scabious, and there's a really lovely picture of a small tortoiseshell taking advantage of those flowers. And finally, August to October, again, an entirely different list of plants: sea holly, dahlia, echinacea, helenium, phlox, cardoon, sedums. And these lists are not complete, so there will obviously be other species that will be suitable at these times of years as well. So there you go, some really beautiful pictures there. And there we go again, our butterflies enjoying them. If you don't have a large garden or spaces to grow flowers like that, there are options for herbs and window boxes which are equally fantastic. So I'm going to list a couple of species here: chives and rosemary, lavender and thyme, marjoram and strawberry, and lemon balm and mint. So please don't think that this is going to be costly. It really isn't. Lots of these herbs and plant species that grow well in window boxes can be purchased from your local supermarket, B&M, Home Bargains. They do them for really, really cheap. They're really easily looked after, really easily maintained, and provide a fantastic food source for moths and butterflies. We've talked quite a lot about adult food plants, but now we're going to move on to caterpillar food plants. What is good for caterpillars? So some of these you may already have in your garden. Nettles and thistles are really fantastic. These support small tortoiseshell, red admiral, peacock, and comma butterflies. Cabbage family, if you have any of these growing, will support white butterflies, honesty, sweet rocket, nasturtium, cabbage, and broccoli. And finally, for orange tips, there's cuckoo flower and garlic mustard. So the reason we've included caterpillar food plants today is because supporting moths and butterflies through their entire life cycles is very important, not just at their adult stage where they need nectar and pollen. If you have a large garden and you have the opportunity and the space to grow hedges, trees, or bulbs, this particular slide is for you. So if you are thinking about planting any of these things, native is always best. Hedgerows, hawthorn, blackthorn, and dogrose are very good. Brimstone moths tend to shelter in winter in these species, and painted lady feed on the nectar. With bulbs, a lot of people are planting bulbs now at this time of year. Bluebell, crocus, and snowdrop are some really good options. And if you're planting trees, hazel and willow tend to be the best because they provide early nectar sources, but the flowers from crab apple trees in summer and the flowers from ivy in autumn are equally as fantastic. Buff-tip moths, which is the moth highlighted in that bottom right photo there, are well camouflaged against the bark of willow, birch, and other trees where they will lay their eggs. So some really fantastic examples there for hedges, trees, and bulbs if you're planning to plant any of these in your garden. If you would like to help moths and butterflies in other ways that don't just include planting, shelter is very, very important. So I think in wintertime, we do tend to forget that some butterfly and moth species spend that winter period as caterpillars, pupae, or eggs. Even though they are not there in terms of being able to be seen, they are still there. They are just hiding away. So providing shelter for them is very, very important. Taking a more relaxed approach to maintaining the garden. I know we love our manicured lawns and our kind of trimmed, clean edges, but leaving the garden a little bit more wild in some areas can be really good. So leaving some sections or sides of your hedges unpruned is fantastic. It gives that kind of more rugged area for the moths and butterflies to hide in. It's a lot more dense and it provides that safe space. Not burning your chip cuttings or your areas of your garden where you've cut away and potentially branches of your trees. You could potentially be killing caterpillars if you burn them because the caterpillars can hide in these areas, but instead stacking them in quiet corners of your garden is really good for them, but also for other insects and hedgehogs too. Going green with your use of your pesticides and your herbicides, you can choose more natural options for controlling slugs and snails if that's your particular problem in the garden. Planting shrubs and trees we've talked about, and variety is the spice of life for us and insects, and I do say this in lots of my talks, but planting for all cycle stages for moths and butterflies with and without nectar is really, really important, and we've discussed that a little bit already. And finally, spreading the word that moths and butterflies are fantastic. They are fantastic insects, but if you do take anything away from this PowerPoint today, maybe you've got some ideas for your garden now that you're going to go away and put into action. If you're talking with friends and family, tell them about it. It could give them some ideas for their own garden. And the more gardens we get in better condition for moths and butterflies, the better. So I did talk a little bit about wild spaces earlier, but we're going to discuss it in a little bit more detail now. But essentially, wild spaces was an initiative started by Butterfly Conservation a number of years ago now, and we created a specific website just for wild spaces. But essentially, wild spaces is an area, big or small, that has been improved for wildlife, particularly moths and butterflies. So the website that we have set up has some really great information and resources on it. It has lots of great ideas on what you can do to make room for butterflies and moths, no matter where you live and the space you have available, because that really doesn't matter. If you are going to register your wild space, it should be free of pesticides. And if you're using compost, it should really be peat free. And if the wild space has been created, we really want it to be permanent. So something that you and your local wildlife will enjoy for years to come. It won't be just a blip in time. It'll be something there to support lots of different generations of moths and butterflies. So looking a little bit closer at the website then, there's an area on the website to learn a little bit more about wild spaces. It's the About tab. There is an area where you will be able to see your own wild space when you have it registered. You go on, you add some photos, you add your location, a little bit of a description, maybe what you've done in your wild space to improve it for moths and butterflies. You then have it registered and it will appear on an interactive map. So on that map, you'll be able to see your own wild space, but you'll also be able to see everybody else's wild spaces across the UK, which can give you inspiration, ideas, tips, and tricks for your own garden. There's also a tab for Species ID if you need help with that. The Info Hub is fantastic for lots of different inspiration for your garden, pictures and stories. There is an About tab, as I said, and then there's an FAQ tab if you have any particular burning questions. So wild spaces really, finally, is to provide three main things that butterflies and moths need to complete their life cycles, which is an area to feed, an area to breed, and an area to take shelter. So if your wild space has all of those three things, you will undoubtedly be influxed with moths and butterflies, fingers crossed. So this slide covers a little bit about getting involved with us as a charity if you would like to. Volunteering is really the first kind of signpost where I send people. We have some really fantastic volunteering opportunities coming up in the next couple of months. If you'd like to get involved with that, I will cover that soon in the next couple of slides. But we have a volunteering link for our website, which you can also go on and have a look and see what the opportunities are there. There is the National Moth Recording Scheme, which is the main recording scheme we use for collating moth data. So all of the moth data that you will record will go directly there. And if you do upload any data, please know that that data is really important to us and it goes towards our vital research. Big butterfly count, obviously this has passed by for this year, but if you're interested in taking part, please have a look on our website and our social media pages for the dates for 2025. Annual Moth Night, which is a night which happens once a year, and everyone who is interested in moth trapping will go out and trap in their own particular gardens, or if they've been granted access to trap on a local wildlife site, then they'll do that. It means we get a really huge influx of moth data at once, and that informs our research again. There is also the garden moth scheme where you can trap for moths in your garden once a week. You also submit that data to us, and it gives us a really good snapshot of what your garden is doing and what the moths are doing over a quite a long period of time. And finally, submitting your records in general, either to iRecord or other databases, is really, really vital to us. We wouldn't be able to produce our State of UK butterflies or moth reports without them, and it wouldn't inform any of our research. We rely heavily on your records. So supporting us then, if you would like to support us, this is a little bit of information about what you get if you do so. We rely really heavily on membership subscriptions to keep going. Per year, it's £38 and £3.16 a month. This is definitely less than the price of a cup of coffee now with with the price of things. If you do register to support us as a member, you get a lovely membership pack. So there are gardening booklets. So there's common garden butterflies, gardening for butterflies and moths, an introduction to caterpillars as well. So some really great resources there. ID charts if that's something you struggle with, invitations to events, our butterfly magazine 3 times a year. I always rave about the butterfly magazine. It's fantastic. It includes lots of feel-good stories from us as a charity and the fantastic work and research that we've been doing. If we've kind of broken the mold and done something really exciting or potentially introduced a new species or something like that, that will be included in the butterfly magazine. And as well as that, there are some companies who advertise in our butterfly magazine who allow you to go on and have a look at butterfly holidays, which means the entire holiday is planned around you finding butterflies and moths in tropical countries. So there you go. You can have your butterfly magazine, read away, and plan your next holiday destination at the same time. What is better than that? You also get some lovely postcards, a nice car sticker, and membership of your local branch as well. So you can keep an eye on what your local branch is doing. I talked a little bit about getting involved in butterfly conservation in terms of volunteering. Well, our winter warmer work parties are the perfect example. So you can join us on a work party and make a difference to some of our most threatened species and special landscapes, all whilst enjoying the health and well-being benefits of being outside. So some of these dates and locations listed below may not be suitable for those if I am preaching to a North Coast audience. However, if you'd like to take a trip down there, then you can certainly go down and help us at the same time if you'd like to do so. So the first list of dates are Thursday the 24th of October and Thursday the 7th of November at 9:30 to 1 p.m. This will be in Enniskillen at a site called Bowara. Bowara is a small parcel of unimproved grassland. It's just outside of Enniskillen, and you'll be managing it for dingy skipper, cryptic woodwhite, narrow-bordered bee hawk moth, and the activities you'll be taking part in are scrub management and scything patches of grassland. And this is really because parts of the habitat have become quite rank and unsuitable for the species, so you'll be essentially improving the habitat condition. The next list of dates is Thursday, the 21st of November, Thursday, the 12th of December, and Saturday, the 18th of January. All of these are from 9:30 to 1 p.m. This will be for cryptic woodwhite at Craigavon Lakes. So you'll be working with Armagh City, Banbridge and Craigavon Borough Council to manage areas of Craigavon Lakes for the well-known cryptic woodwhite populations. And this is really where encroaching scrub is becoming a threat to grassland habitat, which is what the species relies on most. And the final set of dates is Tuesday, the 3rd of December, Tuesday, the 14th of January, from 10 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Again, this will be in priority landscapes, so marsh fertility at Munchies Moss in County Armagh. You'll be working with RSPB at Munchies Moss SAC to help marsh fertility populations. Again, this will be through habitat management, so probably scrub management and improving the overall condition of the habitat for the butterflies. So if you'd like to attend any of these dates, what you need to bring is warm, waterproof clothing and sturdy boots or wellies. These are definitely a must. Some of the sites can get very boggy and wet. And please bring a packed lunch. Any tools and equipment you'll need will all be provided on the day. And if you have any questions about taking part, or would like to register your in-test, please contact Rose Kremen. There's her email and her mobile below. And we're really looking forward to it, and obviously everybody is welcome. So I just want to say a final thank you very much for listening and those who clicked on the video to have a watch. I would also like to thank our funders, the Heritage Fund and Department of Communities, as well as the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. Our Northern Ireland Butterfly Conservation Committee, who are a fantastic group of people who do great work for moths and butterflies. And finally, Causeway Coast and Glens Heritage Trust for this partnership event. If you'd like to contact myself, it will be at my Species on the Map Officer email, which is listed below, or the general email for Northern Ireland Butterfly Conservation. So thank you very much for listening, everybody, and thank you very much for joining.